If it were done, when 'tis done, why then 'twere well it were done quickly. If the assassination could trammel up the consequence and catch with his surcease success, that but this blow might be the be-all and the end-all here. But here, upon this bank and shoal of time, will jump the life to come. But in these cases, we still have judgment here that we but teach bloody instructions, which being taught, return to plague the inventor. This even-handed justice commends the ingredients of our poisoned chalice to our own lips. He's here in double trust, first as I am his kinsman and his subject, who should against his murderer shut the door, not bear the knife myself. Besides, this Duncan hath borne his faculties so meek, hath been so clear in his great office, that his virtues will plead like angels, trumpet-tongued against the deep damnation of their taking off, and pity, like a naked newborn babe striding the blast, or heaven's cherubims, horsed upon the sightless couriers of the air, shall blow the horrid deed in every eye, that tears shall drown the wind. I have no spur to prick the sides of my intent, but only vaulting ambition, which o'erleaps itself and falls on the other. We will proceed no further in this business.
Don't use any of the chin part, I think.
What are we supposedly be doing something different?
More interaction.
Oh, more interaction.
He wants us to like each other on the camera.
Okay, well, we can talk about brownies.
I don't think we should talk about brownies. I think we should talk about directors.
Directors?
We'll be talking to directors this evening as a two-part show. So for the first half hour this evening, you will be seeing us get to know some directors in the area. Get a little tidbit of info on how they got started. We have 4 directors for you. It's going to be great. Chris is your host this evening, taking the spotlight. I'll be running tech and sound, which is insanity.
You're great at it. You're great at it.
Hopefully we'll get to see people's faces and hear their voices. That's our goal. So stay tuned, and we hope you like it.
It's a director's roundtable, and I would like everyone, if they possibly could, to introduce yourselves and to mention the production company that you're affiliated with or most closely associated with. Starting with
Moana Whiteman. I am a member of the Dorset Players, and I do volunteer there in many capacities.
Wonderful, wonderful.
My name is Erica Schmidt. I am actually a more of a dance theater director. I have been directing and choreographing Vital Spark North for about 18 years. And it is basically a company that integrates dance, theater, soundscape, and film. And so that's what I do. And then I also choreograph for theaters, community and professional theaters.
Wonderful.
Shakespeare on Main Street. I'm the artistic director. We just celebrated our 10th year. I have also started another program called Shakespeare Under Lock and Key, where I take Shakespeare into a maximum security prison and work with the inmates doing Shakespeare.
Wonderful, thank you.
And I'm Jeff Linebeck. I'm the Vice President of the Board of Directors of Dorset Players and a director for their spring musicals.
Thank you, Jeff. Well, aside from the last few years, my acting experience involved calling up my employer and mentioning that I wasn't feeling good that day and say, I got the dreaded allergy, I won't be in, boss. But over the last few years, I've been very lucky to be involved at Hubbard Hall and we begin rehearsals with a table read, and at the table read, I don't know where are we going to go with this. What is going to happen? How's it going to work? And by the time we're ready to open, I'm just amazed at where it's gone. I've never been disappointed with any show that I've been in, and they crackle, and it's thanks to the directors. And we'll get into that. But I just wanted to mention it, that the directors have a vision. Not everybody can be a director, and we'll delve into that. First, though, I would like to ask you all what your first encounter was with the theater, as a child or in college, or I think the audience would like to know. Jeff?
I started very young as a child, and came from an area of upstate New York where there was a great deal of community theater and opera and many other opportunities, and a very good high school that had a very good theater and musical department. So I come to it as an actor to begin with, and then when I went to college, started to delve into directing a little bit, and then continued to act, continued to be in things, and was asked to direct a production of Fiddler on the Roof for a community theater company in my area. And I suspect that, knowing that I had already done the show 3 times at that point, that they thought I was going to audition, so they wanted to nip that in the bud quickly and get me to direct so I wouldn't audition. It almost backfired on them, because 1/2 hour before opening night, the actor playing Tevye was in the bathroom trying to pass a kidney stone.
Ouch.
And the only person who knew the role was me. So I was in costume, ready to go on, but fortunately it passed, and it wasn't necessary, but
He survived.
he did.
So did the show.
Mercy.
And he did
Man.
very well.
The show always goes on.
But those are the things you run into as a director.
Gary?
For me, this is in high school, and I told my mother that they were holding auditions for the musical The Music Man, and my mother said to me, I never forgot this, if you don't audition, I'll never speak to you again. So I auditioned. I got a small part of Tommy Gillis, and as soon as I started to rehearse on the stage, I found my home. I can say this honestly, in some way it saved my life. And then years later, as I then went into it professionally and got into directing, and then let that go and moved up here to the backwoods of Vermont, people found out that I was in theater, and they pulled me back into it. And then what I had said about myself, I had parents say to me, thank you. If it wasn't for theater, I don't know where my daughter or my son would be. So I had a professional career in New York. My claim to fame was I did Old Calcutta on Broadway, and I toured doing Grease, and then, as I like to say, I did New York did me, and said, it's enough, it's time to go, and I came up here, and lo and behold, I got born into theater again. So
How'd your mom know?
My mother was always very, she's a singer, very intuitive, and just knew that about me. I could go on more stories of another off tack that she knew that I was going to be a percussionist, and gave me a pair of bongos for one Christmas. Thanks, Mom. What did moms know? And yet I also have a drum school, and that's one of the things I teach at the college level. So
She's a hep mom.
yeah.
Erica?
I grew up in a theater family, but mostly dance. But I grew up outside of Chicago and was introduced to all levels of theater. Straight plays, musicals, opera, ballet, everything. Just my life was full of that. And I had, my dance training in the Chicago area, and decided actually to pursue visual art. So I do visual art and theater. How I got into directing was I was teaching and performing for many years, got into graduate school, and in visual art. And at that point, it was, there was this life as a visual artist, this life as a dancer, and it was not, there was, those two worlds were so almost not negotiable. They didn't sort of even recognize each other. And I said, I'm sorry, but this can't go on. And I just kind of brought it together in graduate school and started making performances that involved both extremely beautiful, big visual sets, film. I worked with actors, musicians, and dancers, and people from all walks of life, which really brought some incredible juice to work. So that was how I got into directing. It was more about my feeling that performing arts belonged to everybody. And I had this very formal training and had worked professionally as, as a performer, and just felt that that's what I wanted to do. It's just kind of the way I viewed the world. And so that's how I got into it.
Fascinating. Mona.
It is fascinating. I am going to prove her point that performing arts belong to everybody because my mother was in community theater, and so each of the girls had to try out for Guys in Disguise, which was our theater club in high school. And we all made it. That was very important. And then, after high school, I did nothing whatsoever. No training, no acting, 40 years. Then I retired, came to Vermont, and discovered the Dorset Players. And you could volunteer there. As long as you're willing to work, you could do anything, and you could try out for any show. So I started trying out for shows and getting little roles and then some big roles, and I had a wonderful time at it. And of course, I know it doesn't show, but I am getting older, and it's harder and harder to get roles, especially roles for women, because there are always 40 women trying out for the one older woman's role that's in the show. So I did get to play Dr. Einstein in Arsenic and Old Lace, and that was a lot of fun, a great challenge. And then I moved on to designing and building sets, because anybody can do that.
Well, I don't know.
You just have to work hard. You just have to work hard.
Can do that.
So I kind of got into that niche, and I've only actually directed one show. I have directed a lot of people because that's kind of what filled the 40 years when I wasn't acting. I was doing management, which is a form of acting, and a lot of directing. But I had a wonderful time directing that one show. I managed to pick the most wonderful people to work with in the show, and was very, very fortunate.
Well, that's so everybody has acted prior to directing. What skills as an actor can you bring into directing? Is it possible?
Oh, very much so.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned that you picked a great cast. Did being an actor, help in that?
Of course.
Yeah.
Because as an actor, you learn a role. As if you're picking an actor, you have a better idea of what you're looking for. You also, I think, have a sensitivity to what that person will do, especially if you've worked with them. I mean, we're a group that tends to do lots of different jobs within the group, and so everybody does a little bit of everything. So you get a very good sense of what the other people can do. But of course, if a new person comes in, that adds fresh blood, new life.
And general rejoicing.
General rejoicing, right. Yes, to it. So I think your experience as an actor offers a lot. It also, the experience as an actor offers the knowledge of what the directors the actor has worked with were like, and what was good and what was not so good, and what you should do and what you should definitely avoid doing.
Does anybody have an additional take on that? Any acting skills that brought you into the director's chair?
Well, for me, what I able to do, I work energetically with my actors, and having been an actor, I can sense by their body language how much they're willing to step into whatever I'm asking them to do. And I have at times, whatever I've asked my actors to do, I will do. I will, if I need to demonstrate for them. I know this may be almost, some would disagree with this, but I have found, and this gets into a whole thing about working with amateurs, but perhaps I'm getting ahead of myself. But I find that by virtue of being an actor, that I can sense where they're coming from. And I can, to quite a degree, help them, woo them, make them feel comfortable to get past what they thought they weren't capable of doing. So that's what I bring.
That's wonderful. Yeah, that's part of that, the vision that I just don't think I've got. But Jeff, when did you know that you had to direct?
When I was asked.
You were
when I was invited to do so. No, and Mona touches on a very, very good point that is really one of the first duties of a director when a show is starting, and one of the most critical is choosing a cast, because you almost have to feel it intuitively, because you don't, from day one, you don't see the people doing the role and doing what you're going to be requiring of them. But you kind of have to have this intuitive feeling that yeah, they can do it, or we can stretch them as an actor to be able to do things that maybe even at the beginning they're not sure they can do. And then how do people look together? You have an actress that's working with another actor, and how do they work together? You would be very difficult to pair up with someone just because of your stature.
There's a certain monster that roams around in the woods that I've always thought that I could probably do. That's a solitary thing.
Yeah.
Erica, what about you?
Well, it's interesting because as a role, as a director for the kind of theater that I do, it's basically, I create it. So there's a difference between working with a script that's already out there, or a musical where, there's a, Oklahoma, you know stylistically how it's supposed to look, what the look of the dance is supposed to be like. And that extends to the actors, the same way. So the difference between the kind of traditional theater that the rest of you do is that I'm creating with pretty much who I choose to create with. So it's a little bit different, and on the other hand, sometimes I am working with amateurs who are not professional, who are not trained. And so then my job is to, you know, somehow bring them up into the craft. So what do I have to do to bring them into that craft? I have to work with them consistently over a period of time to give them the tools. You know, acting has tools just like dance, just like music. I think, you know, so I'm not, I can't remember, the original question is what is it that I bring, you know.
I mean, you know, some people are maybe, you know, pushed into directing, and then some of them, just, you know, maybe it's part of your destiny that you really, you know, you were meant to direct, and you sail into it. You can sail it, you know, I mean, you can sail into it if you're being pushed into it too. I was pushed into acting and, you know, really like it, but directing is really different. You know, just the whole vision.
You do have you do have to have a vision. I think you pick material that moves you, that you believe in, something that you enjoy, and that's changing all the time. So, you know, I mean, I'm sure that people don't choose plays or choose musicals that they don't like, you know, that they don't have some affinity for, something that they feel strongly about.
They may have them thrust upon them, though, I suppose.
I guess, you know, I don't know.
I think you have the responsibility to say no.
I would hope so. If you don't,
Can you do that?
Oh, absolutely.
You have to.
Yeah.
You have to.
I mean, with choreography, I have taken on projects with shows that I'm not that excited about, but I always find some way to, it transcends the material, and then it's about the actors. It's really about the process, and then that is what becomes very, very rich and very rewarding. So then, you know, yes, you have the material, yes, you have the play, yes, you have the musical, but there's so much more to it than that. That is about the process and about the people that you're working with, and how what you can bring out of them as an actor. What do you bring out of them that they never thought they could do? Or you learn from that. I mean, it's a kind of a two-way street.
Well, let me try to dispel a myth here, I think, is that people who aren't involved in the theater are people who have never directed. They tend to think of the director as being the taskmaster, but in reality, the director is really the slave to many different masters. You've got the playwright, the composer, the lyricist, the ability of the actors, the enthusiasm of the actors, the set designers, the costume designers, all of those things you're put together to coordinate, but you know, they can make or break you. And as a director, you need to be open to what's on the page. You know, you need to consider the composer's intent, the lyricist's intent, the playwright's intent. You may have a vision. Times change. I mean, certainly when I directed HMS Pinafore by Gilbert and Sullivan a few years ago, you know, written in the late 19th century, now here we are in the early 21st century, culture has changed, things have changed. You have to make a decision. Do you want to do it strictly as a period piece, or do you want to make some sort of statement to current
happens
culture.
all the time.
I've seen a lot of that with Shakespeare. Shakespeare
done in different eras
can be all over the place. I saw Hamlet, and he was in his pajamas the entire thing. And but how do you? But that's interesting. And how do you proportionally figure out what you're going to give out? Like how much goes to the material, how much goes to the actors, and how much goes to the audience?
Yeah, that was a question. When you say that, what do you mean? How much of what? How much attention,
as a director,
energy?
Yeah, exactly.
Attention, energy.
How much energy? How much director's energy do you give to the purity of the language and material, or do you give the actors a lot of leeway within the play, or do you kind of charge it up so the audience feels a part of it? And
Well, all of it.
all of
that.
it.
All of
So
it.
it's like a third, a third, a third. So
100% to all three.
100% to all three.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's
I mean, I feel that the material, the play itself, that is primary to me. I mean, you really need to like pay attention to what, you know, if it's West Side Story, I don't know. Can you mess with West Side Story? You know, there's an integrity in the written script and the music, and I think that for me would always come first. Then, how does the ensemble, how do the actors take to that, and what my vision would be, and then the audience is of course important, but I don't know that I would play to the audience.
Yeah.
I mean, they're gonna be there and bring themselves to it, I think. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. That you don't treat the audience as being inferior. You know,
Right.
You bring them to
Right.
where you are, where your vision is.
Right.
You try to bring them along, and you know, some will, some won't, but
as best as you can.
as best you can.
Well, thank you all very much. We will end this segment now, and we will see you again for the next episode. Thank you all very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
When I put the lemon and the lime to my face, that means first show closing. Oh, I'm making a mess. Wait for it. Now we're all set. We're squared away. Everything's where it should be, and we're ready to go.
All right.
Okay?
Yeah.
No lemons and limes all over the place. So that was it. That was the first half of our director's show.
It was fascinating. We got to know about them, their backgrounds a bit.
We did. We got to know some of the area directors and how they got started, their beginnings, which is great because it's a beginning to a 1 hour special. So this was the first half. The next half will be coming up soon. And how about some spoilers? Anything? A little spoiler? A little bit?
I think there's a certain intensity that builds in the second episode.
Ooh, you'll want to tune in for that because it gets a little
Yeah.
passionate. But the real spoiler is that we'll all be wearing the same exact clothes. I know. But that's because we filmed it in one day. It's not because we always wear the same clothes and we smell really bad. And you can't see that on camera.
Well, I smell really bad.
It's true. It's not true. All right. Well,
Her
thank
hair
you for
used to be straight.
Thank you for watching the first half of our director's show on Theater Beat, and be sure to tune in for part 2.
Thank you, folks.
It happens to every actress that is moderately pretty and successful. It's one of the oldest expedients in the world, and us actresses are such conspicuous targets for it. There's scarcely a man connected to the theater who doesn't use us in that way from some time or another. Authors, composers, set designers, lawyers, even the managers themselves. To regain a wife or sweetheart's affection, all they have to do is invent a love affair with one of us. The wives are always so eager to believe it, and usually we don't even know a thing about it. But even when it is brought to our attention, we don't seem to mind that much. At least we have the consolation of knowing that we are the means by which many a happy marriage avoided divorce court. Oh, darling, don't apologize. You couldn't have known. Of course. It all seems so plausible to you. You fancy your husband in an atmosphere filled with perpetual temptation, in a backstage world filled with beautiful sirens without morals and scruples. No one understands that more than your husband, who is evidently a very cunning lawyer. So he plays upon your fear and jealousy to regain that love that you deny him. He writes letters and leaves them on your desk in hopes that you'll find them. And never trust a lawyer to do that unintentionally. And he orders flowers for me in the morning by telephone and cancels them by the time that he gets to work. By the way, hasn't he a lock of my hair? They're always bribing my hairdresser to steal some from me. It's a wonder that I have any hair left at all. And what about my love letters? Hasn't he left some of them lying around? Don't worry, I haven't written him any. I might have if he asked me plainly and said, "Sarah, could you do something for me? My wife and I haven't been getting on so well, and I was wondering if you could write a letter for her to find somewhere." And of course I would have written one. I would have written a love letter so passionate that you would have been crying in your pillow for a fortnight. I wrote 10 just like that for a very eminent playwright once, but it didn't really work out so well for him. His wife was such a proper person that she returned every single one of the letters to him, completely unread.